Anyway, we then cut to Julius, who comes into a room and asks Ceridwen what is going on, telling her that he has been unconscious for 4 days with no sign of waking up. Ceridwen looks back at Julius as she tells him that he's diving into his dreams. She explains that she used her magic to give him a catalyst, and now he's working on reviving his past. Julius is super confused as he asks her what all of that is supposed to help him get this new power. Ceridwen then takes her tongue around her lips as she says that she isn't quite sure it will work, as, after all, the sword is under Finn's jurisdiction. Julius just looks at her and asks her if she is serious. She then puts her hand on Will as she explains that she has no intention of criticizing Finn's method. However, she does think that if they are going to stand against the heavens, they will need a different approach. Julius asks her what she is talking about, but Ceridwen continues and says that history is buried within your body. The tracks made by wand and sword constantly intersecting trace them all the way back to his origins, and then, if possible, she hopes that someday he may reach the source of it all. And this is super interesting, but it just gives me so many more questions. For example, why does she have a picture of Will and Elfie in her home? However, we seem to leave that for now as we see Will, who thinks that his hands and feet are smaller, and not to mention Elfie's a little too. It's like he has gone back to the old days. Elfie then has a huge smile as she asks Will what's wrong. Will, however, just looks around as he wonders if this is really his past, wondering if Ceridwen used her magic to send him back in time. No, scratch that, as magic is even powerful enough to turn back time. That would mean that this is a memory. However, he questions whether he is dreaming about something that happened in the past. While he is in his head, however, we do see Elfie yelling towards him a ton, but since he still isn't answering, we can see that Elfie is getting pretty mad as she looks at Will, super annoyed. After that, Elfie throws herself right at Will and screams at him to look at her. Will is super confused, but he then looks at Elfie, who is close to crying. Elfie asks him if he was thinking about another girl just now. Will, however, tells her that he wasn't. Elfie, however, continues as she tells Will that he is always spoiling Claire and the other girls at the orphanage. Will tells Elfie that he's just trying to help Father, who is the director of the orphanage. Elfie then gets even madder as she tells Will not to do that, telling him that he isn't allowed to cheat on her. Now this is actually super wholesome, but I just want to remind you guys, this is the same person who is currently one of the strongest mages ever. Anyway, we then get into Will's brain as he thinks that he came to think of it. He guesses that Elfie was even more selfish back then. Will then speaks up and asks her how he can get her to forgive him. Elfie looks right at Will as she tells him that he can do it by giving her a hug. Their eyes then meet, and both of them start to blush. After that, Will hugs Elfie tightly, and that makes her blush even more. She then tells him to pat her on the head as well, and Will then just does that. And we then see Elfie just laughing and having the biggest smile ever in the world. We then head into Will's head as he explains that it's all so familiar. He remembers he used to do this to get her out of her bad moods. Elfie then takes Will in her hand and starts to walk away. She tells him that now that she is full of willpower, it's time to go and slay the beast. Will looks really concerned as he asks her if she just said beast. Elfie looks back at him and explains that there's supposed to be a weird beast in the forest, saying that Father doesn't like it being here, so they are going to get rid of it for him. Will continues to look worried as he tells Elfie that it isn't safe. He tells her that she can do amazing things, but that he can't even use magic. But just as he says that, he thinks that he didn't mean to say that, thinking that this is the past. So is he repeating exactly what he said back then? Elfie then tells him that it's okay, and that she brought their favorite book after all. She explains that this will give them all the courage that they need. She looks right at Will and tells him that everything's going to be fine, as Elfie will be here to protect him. Will looks at her as he thinks that it's right. The old him was a coward who was afraid of everything. Elfie was always protecting him. This made Will wonder when it was that Elfie started depending on him. Will then takes her hand, and the two of them start to run through the woods. However, we then see this insane beast-looking creature spotting them. We then head back to the two of them, and Elfie says that there's a war in a place called Regarden, and some scary people and monsters escaped and came here. Will asks her if that's true, and Elfie tells him that it is, telling him that the beast in the forest came from Regarden too, and now it's making trouble. Will then thinks that it's all coming back to him. 10 years ago, he and Elfie went into the forest behind the orphanage. Will then speaks up and asks Elfie if she can handle it. She just has a huge smile as she tells Will that she, of course, can. Will knows that he for sure remembers this conversation, but everything after that is a blur, so he wonders what exactly happened. Just then, as they are happily walking and holding hands, we see the creature coming from behind them. He attacks them with no hesitation and makes both of them fly away. They both hit the ground pretty heavily, but as they get back up, they look at it and think that it's a crystal monster. However, Will, on the other hand, thinks that it's not a monster, but that he has seen enough now to know it's a creature, a magical weapon made by mages. It's already been damaged, so it really did escape the war. The monsters then start to roar right at them. Will gets scared. Meanwhile, Elfie tells him to stay right here, and she walks towards it. Will is just still on the ground and calls out her name. Elfie then looks super determined as she tells him that she is going to take it down, explaining that she will do it with the awesome spell that she thought of. With that, she uses Ars Weiss, and we then see the first showcase of her ice clones. Elfie then gets a smug look on herself as she says that she and a bunch of other hers are going to beat it black and blue. Will, on the ground, can't believe it as she says that she's multicasting to Ars Weiss. Her magic control was so advanced even at this age. He always knew that Elfie was amazing after all, but even then, he wonders why he has such a bad feeling about this. We then see Elfie saying that here she goes, and she then uses Terrace Nono, which sends a ton of ice crystals right at the monster. But just as they are getting closer, we cut to Will, who screams at her to run, because after that, we see that the ice crystals that were going to the monster are now out of nowhere heading right back at Elfie. We see her ice clones getting destroyed. Before we see Will, who looks over at Elfie, just then, he gets one of the ice crystals directed right at him. We then see both him and Elfie being sent back. Will tries to get up, as he says that it's a magic's reflection, and that it was what this creature was built for. Will then spots Elfie on the ground and screams at her to run. Elfie, however, tells Will that she isn't hurt, and that she isn't even scared. She continues as she says that she is going to take the monster down, and then protect Will herself. And as Will hears that, we can see him looking super destroyed. We then get into his head, as he explains that he can't move. But Elfie is about to get hurt, and it's all his fault. He tells himself to get a grip, and to move, and to run to her. After that, we see Will start to grip the grass as he thinks that he thought that the person he hated most in the world was the version of him that needed her to protect him all the time. With that, he tells himself a final time to go and do it, and after that, we can see him up on his feet as he starts to rush forward. We then cut to Elfie, who is using another of her spells right at the monster, but of course the monster just sends them right back at her. Luckily, however, we can see that before any of the attacks managed to hit Elfie, we see that Will came and blocked them all as he got on top of her. Elfie's eyes go blank as she calls out to Will before she starts to scream out of pure agony. Will then falls right on top of her, and Elfie screams at him multiple times to just wake up. However, instead, we get into Will's head as he thinks that he remembers now that he shielded Elfie and passed out. But he wonders what happened next and who it was that saved Elfie. We see that Will's eyes are starting to go blank, and it then goes blank for him. But then, in the next panel, we see some strange witch telling Will to awake. This makes Will's eyes get back in an instant, and after that, we can even see that it's some weird thing coming out of Will's body. Will himself explains that he feels so hot, he feels as if his flesh is on fire, and that his whole body is about to explode, thinking that his body is the vessel, and that it's becoming a sword. After that, we see Elfie putting her hand through Will's hair as she calls his name. However, Will is just in his brain, as he thinks that there was more to this adventure. After that, we can see that he is getting on his feet. He starts to walk away from Elfie and towards the monster. We then get a close-up of his hand as he thinks that this is the origin of the sword and the beginning of Wiss, saying that he is now fully charged, and with that, we get an ice spear right in his hand. However, we then see the monster starting to roar right at Will, but still Will looks locked in as he says, "Tyrus Wiss," and seems to shoot the ice spear at the monster, and we can even see how much it shocks Elfie. But Will then thinks that it all makes sense now. He now sees why he knew back then that nothing could stop this power. He recognized it, as Elfie's magic had created it before, explaining that this is the Mage Blade, and with that, we see Will going to slash the monster. However, as he hits him, we can see that both of them manage to collide with each other. Will looks a bit worried, but just at that moment, we see Elfie, who screams out to him. After that, we can see her right by Will's side, as the two of them then look right at each other. The two of them then shake their heads at each other as they hold the weapon together, and they then, with all of their power, go to try and pierce the monster. And we then actually magically manage to see the monster being frozen solid. However, after that, both Will and Elfie fall backwards due to the force, but they manage to fall next to each other, and they hold on to one another. Elfie tells Will that he has magic, and that right now, this is his own magic. Will, however, doesn't answer, as we can see that he is beginning to once again lose consciousness. He thinks that this is his origin story, the beginning of the Mage Blade, a precious feeling that he won't forget again. He will never forget this bond that he shares with Elfie. We then see his eyes closing even more while Elfie is just smiling at him. But then, just when they are about to close fully, Elfie thanks Will, and this is so wholesome, I can't even lie. After that, we see Julius and Kiki being right on him. However, Julius screams and asks if he is finally awake. Will is super confused, but Julius then tells himself to hurry up, explaining that he has been asleep for 6 days and that the second bloom is about to start. Will just looks down at his hand. Meanwhile, Julius asks him if he is even listening. We then see Caradwen on the side, and she asks Will if he managed to access the source of the magical energy anchored inside of him. Will closes his eyes as he says that he did. Caradwen continues as she tells him that he retraced his life's path, asking if he can now revive it. Will tells her that he sure can anytime, and Caradwen just laughs at that. But she then tells him to go out there and write the new tale of the Mage Blade, and Will tells her that he sure will, and we then see him walking out with determined steps. We then cut to the ceremony, where we see Claire saying that Emma has been granted the blessing of wind, and Lyril and Gordon get to join the fire faction. We then cut to Kreutz, putting up his glasses as he thinks that they may be desperate to fill their ranks, but the elemental faction's standards are far too low, explaining that these mages are children who only just got out of school, but it seems like no one cares what he thinks right now, as we then move on to Claire, who tells them that there they have it. She congratulates them and tells them that they can head to their factions. After that, she tells them that the second bloom is just about over, but before she can finish her sentence, we see Lihanna saying that Will and Julius aren't here yet. Wignall adds that they will be disqualified if the bloom ends now,